so happy we alive.
For millions and millions of workers, but of course we're not talking about school bus drivers and airline pilots, because there even Barbara Ehrenreich indicated that, you know, she was willing, she had doubts herself. Well, I want to dispel some of those doubts now by taking a look at these transportation, specifically the transportation industry and what has happened there. Microphones, is this good? Okay. I'm going to start off, again, looking at where the transportation industry regulations that require random drug testing of all transportation workers in interstate commerce came from. And they came from a famous train wreck that happened not far from here in Baltimore in 1987, in fact. Big Amtrak crash. It was fatal. And lo and behold, it developed that a couple of the key train members, crew members of the train that was at fault, tested positive for marijuana. There was a little bit of question about the accuracy of this particular lab, but eventually it was decided indeed they had smoked marijuana at some indeterminate time before this accident. Well, this set up an uproar that led to the Congress quickly enacting regulations that forced the entire transportation industry to submit to random drug testing, not only the trains, but also people in trucking, people in the airline industry, flight attendants, even gas pipeline workers. Now, after all that had gone by, the National Transportation Safety Board finally issued a report, a detailed report on this accident. It was very curious that actually they thought that marijuana had something to do with this accident, but they admitted that it was in fact remained controversial that impairment was actually involved in this. There were clearly some other factors at work, however. For one thing, both of the two train workers at fault also had a long record of speeding and drunken driving violations that were like a dozen or so. So if there had been some better personnel oversight, that might have made a difference too. And even more important probably was the fact that some major safety equipment had been disabled or was lacking. In fact, if there had been the same equipment on the American train system as is required in all European train systems, this accident would never have happened. So it's clear that this problem could have been avoided by equipment changes. It's not at all clear that drug testing could have ever done anything about it. Well, it's interesting to take a look and see what actually did happen. You know, people, I got curious about this a few years later to see, well, you know, had we gotten anywhere from this random drug testing? And here's what I found. Okay. We're looking at human factor accidents, that is, accidents due to human causes on the railroads per million rail miles. And you'll notice there's sort of a general decline here. In fact, if you look at any safety statistics in any industry in the United States, you will find, looking over a long period of time, there's generally just a long-term secular decline. Things get safer. And you know, you might think, for instance, that in the 60s or 70s there'd be a big blip upwards if drugs were a big problem. Or at the end of alcohol prohibition, you might expect to see a big blip in auto accidents or something. You don't see this. It's just a continual decline, generally, with a few little blips here and there. What we see here in the case of the railroads was, as of the time of this accident in Baltimore in 1987, there had been...
Hello. This is Patrick Moore here and greetings from Washington, D.C. We're at the Normal 2000 National Conference, and I'm actually thrilled and very privileged to have with us today someone whose presence is omnipresent among the many organizations and peoples throughout the country who are attempting to bring common sense, some rationality to what's been going on in the area of drug reform. Kevin Zeese, from my perspective, is someone who would truly be considered a visionary. In a sense, in the same sense that the United States and its Constitution were based on the profound thoughts of a few individuals, which later manifested into our great national institutions. I feel that same way about Kevin Zeese. He's someone who was there from the very beginning, and his thoughts, observations, his professionalism is something that has carried through and is the underpinnings for so much of what's happening right now in the country. In addition to being a prolific writer and a respected intellectual, Kevin is also the founder and the chief operating officer of an organization known as Common Sense for Drug Policy, which has a website, incidentally.
The website is www.csdp, commonsensedrugpolicy.org. And I think the website is a great place for people to come to get information and ideas. We have on there, for example, a fact book, which we update regularly. And so if someone wants to write a letter to the editor on race in the drug war, or on AIDS in the drug war, or on kids in the drug war, we have hundreds of facts, just the fact and the citation, and just that alone is so persuasive. And I think anyone who wants to get active in this can find that very helpful. Plus, we have links to all the reform groups in the country. We have a little survey you can fill out that says if you're interested in marijuana, for example, then you can be linked to the various marijuana reform groups. If you're interested in AIDS, you can be linked to the various AIDS concern groups. So the ways for you to get active and involved in the reform movement in areas that you're interested in. So come to the website, csdp.org, and get informed and then get active.
Great. One thing, Kevin, we have, like I said, we have a golden opportunity for a wide open discussion here. But just as a starting point, I am very curious as to what your perspective is as someone who has been around, not to accentuate your age, but rather your wisdom, if you will. Someone who's been around for a while. You've seen a lot of people come and go. You've seen legislation come and go. And could you give us your own historical perspective on the movement?
This is the best time to get involved in the movement. I've been involved in the movement since 1978. So I came in at the end of the Carter years and had the pleasure of being active during the Reagan and Bush and Clinton years. So pretty much a drug war environment that I've been active in. And during that time period, the reform movement has really gone from a crippled normal as really the sole national group. And it was crippled for various reasons, both internal and external. But today, we have literally dozens of strong reform groups. Normal is now strong again. There's Marijuana Policy Project, which is a strong marijuana advocacy group. There's the Drug Policy Foundation, the Linda Smith Center, Drug Reform Coalition Network, Drug Sense. There's just a variety of groups that are finally active, and we're attracting different kinds of people to the movement. These are people who, not necessarily drug users, and not in it for their own drug consumption rights. They're really into it because they see the drug war is destroying American society, and that we won't be able to face up to some of the most important issues that we need to face up to without dealing with the drug war. For example, one of the great issues of the day is the race issue. It's a problem, it's a festering problem, and how do we can solve that problem when in urban areas throughout the country, 1 out of 2 young black men under 30 are either in jail or under court supervision. 1 out of 2 in urban areas around the country. That's a frightening statistic. David Duke, could not have come up with a policy that undermined the black family, the black economy, the black community, and encouraged racism more than the drug war. And